This week on Aliens Explored, we will be looking into the strange tale of Granger Taylor, a talented engineer who built his own flying saucer and then mysteriously disappeared. Is he now in the company of advanced extraterrestrials speeding around the Milky Way at the speed of light, or did he just die a sad and lonely death? This episode of Aliens Explored is dedicated to our Explorer of the Week, Israel. We rely on your support to keep on doing what we do. So check out our Patreon on patreon.com/Aliens Explored to find a tier that suits you.
Aliens Explored is a weekly podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a skeptical perspective, whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it?
Welcome back, listeners, to Aliens Explored, your weekly podcast where we look at UFOs, UAPs, aliens, and all things surrounding them, including people who might have built flying saucers themselves. I'm one of your hosts, Stu Jackson.
And I'm your other host, Neil Kelly. Hello.
Hello, Neil.
How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. I'm very, very good. The sun is shining. The builders are working on the roof and the scaffolding's up outside my block of flats, which is a pain in the arse. But aside from that, it's all
okay,
good.
Well, as you can see, I've got my blind half down. There's a blinding white light behind me, which isn't extraterrestrial in origin. And someone's intermittently running a power tool nearby, but don't seem to be at the moment. Perhaps either a drill or a saw or something like that.
Okay. Okay, well, if we do end up hearing it, we'll know this is just a drill. No need to panic. And I'll try and edit it out if I can.
Well, he picks up his power saw and says, "This is not a drill."
Yeah. Exactly it.
In aid of Give an Elderly Joke a Home Week.
Now, speaking of people using power tools and engineering works and things like that, I mean, oh my God, that was a lame segue, wasn't it? But never mind.
It works for me. Works for me. Keep going.
Well, we are talking today, and I'm really excited to talk about today's subject. This is one I've wanted us to tackle for a little while now, to be honest. Because to me, it's one of those subjects that, on the surface of it, it looks like it can be very, very easily dismissed, like it's almost a bit silly. But when you scratch away at the surface, there is actually a lot of depth to it. So we are going to be talking about Granger Taylor, the Canadian who tried to build his own UFO, his own flying saucer, in fact.
I think it's rather a sad story. I don't think he really did try and build a UFO. I mean, he obviously had a talent for engineering.
Very much so.
Although he didn't fit in at school. He left school after the 8th grade, which, how old is that, about 8 or is that about 12 or 13? I think
I'm not
8th grade.
Entirely sure.
I think in our currency that would be about the second year of secondary school.
I know at 14 he became an apprentice to an automotive mechanic. Yeah, so 14. Yeah, I think 14 sounds about right. Very socially awkward, but a genius when it came to engineering and mechanical.
This was the late 1970s, wasn't it? I think these days, someone like that would probably have some sort of diagnosis as being on the spectrum. Someone who's, a kid who spends his time in his room taking his toys apart to work out how they work, but not really interacting with even 60s, but not really being able to interact with other people. And despite being a big bloke, physically large, being horribly bullied, because that's what kids do, don't they? When someone can't fit in, can't make that leap. And so often people with that sort of talent for engineering, mathematics, science are victim to that from the cool kids. The cool kids who are going to leave school to work in a paint shop or a supermarket, but while they're at school.
And definitely the withdrawn, socially awkward. Absolutely. I mean, obviously, we're not experts in diagnosing people on any kind of spectrum, but it jumped out at me, sort of reading his story and delving into it. Yeah, I'd be very surprised if he's not.
I wouldn't presume to diagnose him, but I would speculate if I met someone. This sounds like it's almost a cliche. This guy, the big guy who can't interact with people, but he's very good at making things and fixing things. Yeah, I would have to wonder. I would
really
what else? Yeah, is this guy worthy of a diagnosis? Yeah, very impressive. I mean, he rebuilt a World War II fighter plane, didn't he? A Kitty Hawk.
He did in the 1970s. He gets his license. Well, he didn't build it. I think he basically renovated it. But I'll tell you what he did build. And again, age 14, he built a car.
A one-cylinder car. It looks like something from the 1910s, doesn't it? A thumper, single cylinder.
Ford Model T style. A thumper. They call the old single cylinders. I had a single cylinder motorbike for a while at one point, and they call it a thumper because you can feel it under your seat.
When it's a large engine, 4-stroke engine. When it's a little 2-stroke engine, 125 or. It doesn't so much thump as whine like a wasp.
I think mine was about a 250.
So he built this thumper.
400cc. Anyway. Age 14.
He restored was it a bulldozer? That
the experts had written off as like, this is completely unsalvageable. So he gets it and he restores it. Yeah.
I mean, but I once had a car that it was quite an old car, and it blew its cylinder head gasket, and was told it's not salvageable because the value of the car doesn't warrant the kind of expense for replacing the head gasket and all the cylinders that have been, all the rods and cylinders that have been wrecked. But the next thing I knew, a few months after I sold it for scrap, I got a fine through the post for some driving violation, and was able to prove that I no longer owned the car, that I'd sold it for scrap.
Yes.
But someone had got it going again, and I think when someone says something's not salvageable, it's to do with the cost of repairing it with brand new parts, rather than someone who's got plenty of time and access to a scrap heap who could get it going again. So. Yeah, I'm not saying
fair enough.
He's clever, but I don't want to do the guy down, because he was obviously very clever, very, very talented when it came to engineering.
Well, I mean, especially dealing with the hydraulics involved with bulldozers and things like that. That's not an easy task at all. He did the same with the train.
Yeah, restored an old steam train rotting in the rainforest, and was able to, with a tree growing through its chassis, but was able to get it out and get it going again. So obviously into that kind of thing. I mean, I've got a cousin whose husband is really into steam trains. He goes to drags her along to all these steam fairs, and then whenever I meet him, usually at a funeral these days, he'll tell me about some traction engine or steam engine that he's seen. I mean. It is fascinating, isn't it, when you can see a machine and you can actually see it working?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think that's... You get those old fairs, steam rallies, I think they call them.
Oh, yeah, that's what you go to, steam rallies, steam fairs,
Yeah, seeing those steam engines and like getting working models of them, and I love that whole thing. Absolutely. But yeah, so he's turned his hand to a variety of different, and like you say, an airplane of Kitty Hawk, as you say. It built that or rebuilt that. Sold it again for like $20,000.
That's highly specialised. I mean, aircraft are very, very highly regulated, aren't they? You can't just knock something up and get it to fly and expect to be allowed to fly it.
Absolutely. Well, he got his pilot's license.
Yeah.
So he knew how to fly it himself. Absolutely incredible. And he gets bitten by the UFO bug. So what happens in his local area? This is Vancouver Island we're talking about here. In 1969, I think it was a local hospital in particular gets buzzed by a UFO. There's 4 separate nurses who see it. A couple of them even see a couple of humanoid figures, like as it's hovering outside the window of this hospital.
I mean, the description is really like a cartoon flying saucer, isn't it? It's the sort of like 2 plates really together with a glass dome on top, and the 2 aliens stood in there looking at it.
But you go, where does the cartoon image come from?
Yeah,
in the first place, so there's that. But loads of other reports of UFO sightings sort of come out around the time, and the whole area gets sort of bitten by the UFO bug, as it were. But we presume Granger does as well, because he decides he's going to where many scientists and engineers have failed with the concept of a flying saucer with this rotating sort of single turbine that allows it to move and fly about all over the place. He decides he's going to solve that mystery.
Does he, though? Is that what? Because what I've seen about his flying saucer is that it was nothing of the kind. I mean, his previous attempts at engineering, or his successful attempts, restoring a World War II fighter plane, getting a steam train running again. He actually laid tracks, didn't he? And kids would visit his farm. They'd ride on the train. But this flying saucer wasn't anything like that. It was basically, he went to the scrapyard and he got, was it 2 sort of satellite dishes?
Yes.
With a sort of cylinder of metal in between. And the thing would sit on stilts, and he'd go and sit. He had a couch, a TV, and a wood burning stove. I mean, this isn't something he would go in there and chill out, and allegedly drop a lot of LSD, and spend a lot of time. But there doesn't seem to be any attempt to build a flying craft.
Right. So there's a lot of misconception around this. And he sets out with the intention, he publicly declares, like to friends and family, that he is going to resolve to build a flying saucer. And he builds this thing exactly as you describe it. The only thing you missed out was the porthole on the side and the lightning flash.
The lightning flash sign,
on the red painted sort of symbol on the side. What he actually built there, what you're describing, was basically a place where he could study UFOs. It's a study.
That was his flying. Yeah, but that was his flying saucer, wasn't it? Is a replica from.
Ever claimed that particular thing that you've described was ever going to take off and fly. He built it that way, basically for inspiration.
I thought that was exactly what we were talking about. Saying this was his flying saucer that he built it, and friends went. There's no way this thing is ever going to fly. It's the only kind of energy generation it has is a wood burning stove for keeping warm.
Yeah, no, he built himself a little place to study UFOs. He always had the intention of, and it is known as his homemade UFO. But that particular, I mean, it's like it's like having a garden shed as somewhere to, sit and study. And in fact, inside that, his homemade UFO, he had books and scores of books. He had science fiction books. He had books on ufology and UFO testimonies and things like that.
We're kind of straying back into the Stars Academy stuff. You've got this mixture of science fiction and engineering books, and you're kind of melding the two in your mind.
Well, he wanted to use that
at least you're not trying to get people to invest in it. But
well, there is that, absolutely. But he wanted to use science fiction as a form of inspiration for solving this problem of how you would create a UFO or how you would solve that technology.
And this was it the late 70s or was it 1980 he did it, or late? I mean, it was around the time when the interest in sci-fi really spiked. The time of
this was the early 70s
movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this would be the late 70s. Well, Star Wars, Close Encounters of the Third Time, the first Star Trek movie, all around 1970. Well, between 77 and 1980.
They were late 70s, but sci-fi certainly had a massive resurgence in the early 70s, which led to movies like Star Wars and That's a whole other thing, but yes. In terms of popularity amongst the populace, Star Trek is. I know I keep banging on about Star Trek on this podcast, but what had happened with Star Trek, and you've got a bit of a cyclical thing happened here. Star Trek, when it first aired, which was late 60s, it was not popular at all.
Well, early 60s,
did very poorly. Yeah, did very poorly. It was only on syndication later on that it actually gained a lot of popularity, but by then it had finished. You did have Star Trek, the animated series, which came out in the early 70s as a response to, and it's almost considered to be the 4th and 5th seasons of Star Trek, because it only ran for 3 seasons, the original series.
Wasn't Lucille Ball behind?
She was behind getting the original series commissioned. Absolutely. If it weren't for her, it wouldn't exist at all. Absolutely. But that's a whole other podcast, right?
I mean, it was on television when I was a kid, when I was we're talking junior school age, and it didn't particularly grab me.
No,
I have to say, I'd sort of look at it, but I wouldn't always watch it all the way through. It just didn't, as a young kid, it wasn't exciting enough. That the aliens were always really cheap special effects. It would either be an invisible presence, or it'll be something that takes over somebody's body and turns them bad, or it'll be it would be someone who would create a mirror image of someone and use a little bit of trick photography so Captain Kirk would meet his evil alter ego controlled by an alien. That was basically
Well, no, when it initially ran, it had really low viewing figures. It was only when it was on repeats, basically, that it really took off, because it was shown at better time slots and through syndication. But that's a whole other thing. But yes, absolutely, late 60s, early 70s is when a lot of people started getting interested in science fiction again. Not that people hadn't been, but there was a resurgence.
I mean, that wasn't really represented very much in movies, was it? In that era,
movies came later. And Star Wars, it could be seen, was a response to, or the popularity of Star Wars was a response to Star Trek being shown on repeats after it had finished, and then Star Trek the Motion Picture was a direct response to the popularity of Star Wars. So it's a real back and forth thing.
I mean, when I first saw Star Wars, I thought it was a one-off. I saw it in the cinema, the first Star Wars movie, and the first thing that comes up, Once Upon a Time in a Galaxy Far, Far Away, and then Episode 4. And so what I thought was, when I was a kid, I used to go to Saturday morning pictures and watch these serials. Be one episode a week.
and it will be Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon or
Yep.
those were the space-based ones. Also things like the Lone Ranger and Captain America, what have you. But I thought, oh, they're recreating that. They're recreating an episode of Buck Rogers, and you would never see every episode. You would never walk in and see episode 1. It would always, let's go to the Saturday morning pictures. Oh yeah, it's episode 16 out of 24. I mean, you soon pick up the story. So I thought that's really, and it was just that. I didn't expect it to actually go any further. Thought, we've seen it now.
No. But there we go. Anyway, back onto topic. We've strayed way off here.
Yeah.
So Granger Taylor back into the world of science fact, and ufology. Yeah, he studies UFO reports and things like that. In his homemade UFO that was just a study. So he hasn't
his UFO shaped shed. His UFO shaped man cave. It wasn't any kind of flying vehicle or any attempt to build a flying vehicle, or certainly that wasn't. Maybe he had another project going on somewhere else, but that wasn't it.
Well, the closest he comes to actually building anything UFO related was he built a radio designed specifically to contact extraterrestrials. Now, there's no record of him successfully getting a direct response over his radio. However, what he does start to claim is that extraterrestrials are visiting him in his dreams telepathically.
Yes.
And he talks about a recurring dream where they talk to him and he keeps asking them about their propulsion system and like wanting them to explain it. All they'll say to him is that it's something to do with magnetism.
Okay, so this guy who spends all his time reading science fiction and engineering books and science claims, sci-fi facts, UFO facts, and strange but true stories and fiction, dreams about UFOs. That's not really surprising, is it?
No, you can certainly see how that would happen.
When you read, you create images in your head, and when you go to sleep, those images pop up again.
Yeah. I can see how that will happen. However, this culminates. I mean, this happens over a period of years. We're not talking like months, but this is years. And it culminates in October of 1980 when he says, again, to very close friends, he doesn't sort of share this wide public knowledge, but he claims that these extraterrestrials have invited him to take a journey with them on a spaceship.
On a 42-month journey around the Milky Way.
Yeah, he says that they're only going to arrive on a particularly stormy night because that'll obscure their spacecraft. And when it comes to pick him up,
there's less chance of people being out and about and seeing it, or being able to say, "Well, I was there and I never saw anything."
Yeah,
on the other hand,
being obscured by cloud cover and what have you, obscured by the weather. There's a lot of reasons for that. And indeed, on the 29th of November, so about a month later, 29th of November 1980, he and his truck vanish.
See, this would have been a better story if he and his UFO had vanished. But it was, that would have been more compelling. But he and his truck vanished. And we're never seen again. He was drinking in a bar. It was a stormy night. A waitress noticed that he wasn't particularly well dressed for that weather, but obviously he had his truck with him, so he could have a few drinks.
Well, he didn't have a coat.
And drunk. He didn't have a coat, but he had a truck.
And just to correct, it wasn't a bar, I don't think. I think it was like a burger joint.
Okay.
So it went for a meal. Like a diner, I think.
Okay. And then he disappeared. He was driving his truck. He wasn't seen for a long time. He drove off into the night. He'd left a note.
Yes.
saying something
Let's
like,
talk about the note. Oh, I can read it word for word.
read it word for
I've got
word,
it.
because it's not very long, is it?
Dear Mother and Father, I have gone away to walk aboard an alien spaceship as recurring dreams assured a 42-month interstellar voyage to explore the vast universe, then return. I am leaving behind all my possessions to you as I will no longer will require that's his error, will no longer will require the use of any. Please use the instructions in my will as a guide to help. Love, Granger. And indeed, he leaves a will behind. He has changed the word deceased to departed throughout the will. Yeah, he leaves behind a note and nobody ever sees him again.
Until 6 years later, some people working in the forests. I mean, we're talking, this is the great American Northwest, or Vancouver Island.
Yeah.
Very, very large area, forested. Yeah. They find a blast crater with look like the remains of a truck, and they find some human remains as well, a couple of slivers of bone. Now, it was known that Granger Taylor did use dynamite for blasting tree roots.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like that what happened was he drove out into these distant woods and either blew himself up either deliberately or accidentally. I mean, it's speculated that maybe it was an accident. Otherwise, if it was an accident, what was all the dynamite for then? I mean, maybe he was going to. It's been speculated that a bit like the Heaven's Gate cult, that in order to board the spaceship, he has to leave his earthly body. So why not just blow it to bits?
I mean, Heaven's Gate wasn't until 97, so
yeah. But in that
87?
Kind of style, that idea that to board the spaceship, you have to leave your earthly body and become a more ephemeral form.
Except everyone who knew him, who was close to him, said absolutely he was not suicidal. He was not that way inclined at all, and they absolutely refute that. But there's a hell of a lot of speculation in what you say. First of all, it's speculation that he had any dynamite with him whatsoever. It's speculation.
It was well known that he used dynamite for blasting tree roots. Yeah, and obviously they can tell that the blast was caused by dynamite.
Can they? Because that's been speculated. That's not been proven.
It does leave chemical traces.
Okay, I always thought that was speculation, but
whether they'd still be there 6 years later, I don't know. But it was known that he made regular use. He had dynamite.
That he had access to it, but then a lot of people will have had access to it around there. I would say it's speculation that this crater and this remnants of truck were his truck. There's no evidence of that.
Well, I suppose they've got no DNA
bits of a truck. They found a couple of bone fragments that were human bone, but at the time they didn't have access. I mean, DNA was a thing back in 1986, but certainly Vancouver police, they didn't have access to ways of telling if it was actually his bone fragment or not. So for a start, this crater, this truck, and these bone fragments, it's pure speculation that it's him at all.
It's speculation, but he's the guy who drove off in his Datsun truck, and could they even tell it was a Datsun truck? Was it so completely blasted to bits that they couldn't even tell what make and model it was anymore? Certainly, a human body that was blown into bits, there'd be nothing left of that after 6 years, because the local fauna would have taken care of it, wouldn't it? They're probably bears, wolves, raptors, crows, foxes, feral cats and dogs, that would have devoured whatever was left.
You'd certainly think so. But
and carried it off into their dens.
He's not the only person to have ever gone missing.
No.
In a vehicle, so That to me, I mean, we talk about like usually it's
Okay.
on the other end of the thing that I'm the one like speculating wildly that oh well, it's the government involved or whatever. I'm going to say it's the other way around. I would say jumping to the conclusion that it's him and his truck.
Well,
That's a
we're
wild
talking about.
speculation.
I mean, he had friends. I don't know how close those friends were. He was obviously someone socially awkward. I can imagine that he was unhappy. And even though he didn't talk about suicide or even act in a self-harming way, an obviously self-harming way, I imagine it was someone who could be persuaded to leave his earthly body and think, and and think, well, what have I got to lose?
Then why would he say about returning in his note?
Speculation again, to save his parents grieving, he would rather just have a mystery, although probably not understanding that kind of mystery can be more painful than actually having the closure of a dead body. I doubt if he'd have understood that, given the kind of person that he was. And and I think he thought, well, just give them hope, that in a few years' time I'll be back. Although if he's going on a 42-month voyage, presumably at light speeds in a UFO, as we know from science, time dilates as you approach the speed of light.
Special theory of general theory of relativity. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The closer you get to light speed.
If you were traveling, if you left Earth in 1980 and travelled at light speeds, and you experienced 42 months travelling around the universe at light speeds, you wouldn't be back yet. You would return to Earth, I don't know, a century in the future. I don't know what the sort of scale is. A month, an hour, or something like that. It would. He would come back into a distant future if that's what he really had gone and done. I just think the answer is more mundane and sad. I think he was a sad, lonely guy who got this idea in his head. And that's another thing about this kind of guy. They can get an idea in their head and it's very difficult to shift it. I'm not making a clinical diagnosis here, but it is known that people on the spectrum, it's very difficult to disavow them of a bad idea or even a good idea.
Okay.
They get it into their heads and there's no shift in it.
Yeah, I can see that. Certainly there are those within his family and his close circle who did believe it. Of it. Certainly his mother, she went to her grave, absolutely convinced that he was up there. But then that's his mother. I can understand the emotional context of why.
Well, then maybe he did get it right. Maybe in that he did judge it right. That I'm going to kill myself, but in a way that my mum won't believe that I'm dead. She'll cling to the hope that I'm alive for the rest of her life.
Maybe.
Another thing I've got to say about the stormy night. Yes, it would mean that there are fewer people about to either see a UFO, if there really was one, or to debunk the story, to say, no, I was out there, I was at that spot, and nothing of the kind appeared on a clear night, or certainly I didn't see anything. But also, certainly if it's a thunderstorm and you're going to blow yourself up with dynamite, as long as you're far enough away from anyone that they don't feel the supersonic shockwave from the explosion, they're just going to think it's a thunderclap.
Possibly.
That's another,
Possibly.
Yeah. I think you've kind of given that. I don't accept that he stepped aboard a spaceship and is travelling through the Milky Way as we speak. I don't.
That's your stance on it.
Yeah, that's my stance on it.
I
think it's
intrigued by the story. I can certainly see the possibility of what you're saying here. But I'm also, I don't know. I find there's just something about that. Maybe it's the whole wanting to believe thing, the drive for that. But certainly there are, I don't know, aspects to his story that I find peculiar.
I mean, I'm perfectly prepared to accept that I have the same need to not believe. It's essential to my my Weltanschauung, if you like, my worldview. That this doesn't happen. This kind of thing doesn't happen in my world.
It's an interesting story. It'd be nice to get an answer one way or another. Definitely. Yeah, what do you think, though, listeners? Is the story of Granger Taylor one, as Neil said, a sad story of a lonely guy who met an unfortunate end, or is it one, is Granger Taylor going to pop up one day and say, well, hang on, why has all this changed? It's only been 42 months. Oh, wait, no, it hasn't. It's been 42 years. 43 years now.
420 years. So that's
420 years. Is he going to pop in at some point, do we think, and wonder why everything has changed? Do let us know what you think. We love hearing what people think. You can contact us through Facebook and Twitter and YouTube by searching Aliens Explored. You can email us, aliensexplored@gmail.com, or if you are one of our Patreon subscribers, then you get exclusive access to our Discord channel where you can discuss this and any other of our episodes with like-minded people and people who will respectfully disagree with you as well. Worth doing for that alone, I think. Join us next time, though, when we will be revisiting one of our earliest episodes, episode 13, I think it was. Lucky for some, we discussed Skinwalker Ranch. Well, we'll be going back and looking at the man who owns it all, Robert Bigelow, and we'll be talking about his connection with ufology and what he's brought to the table, what he perhaps doesn't bring to the table, and all that good stuff. So don't miss that one. In the meantime, keep watching people in strange UFO-shaped studies, and of course,
and trucks packed with dynamite as well. Stay
definitely
clear.
Watch out for that. That's the thing to watch for. Definitely. In the meantime, take care of yourselves. Bye for now.
Catch you next time. Bye bye. Aliens Explored is a Fecal Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter or Facebook by searching Aliens Explored, or visit us on aliensexplored.com.